All right, I'm going to provide a little update on what we're going to do today on chart density. And just to get started, we're looking at JSFiddle here. And this is some test CSS that I've been wanting to write for a while. I want to be able to create a grid with blocks. Maybe I want circles in there. Maybe I want different. I have a lot of ideas for visualizing data just using kind of grid patterns. And then you can change the colors and the shapes and the position in order to express what's going on behind the scene. And so one of the reasons I'm building chart density is I want to be able to test some of these ideas in my own ways, in my own application. So I needed to write this, and I really don't know where to start. I mean, I could go Google how to create a grid in CSS, and maybe, well, one, I'll find a lot of grid related tutorials and things like that. So instead, I used ChatGPT. I just put into ChatGPT what I wanted. I think I needed to modify it. Once it kind of gave me back a grid, but everything was flat, and I said, the squares are flat. They don't have any space in them, and then it gave me something else back. And essentially, it also taught me kind of where I need to start to do this in the future. So what we do is we just create a bunch of divs of a certain class. That makes a lot of sense. And then we use the grid components, grid template columns. And I didn't even know you could do this repeat stuff. This is pretty cool. So it kind of gives me a place to start. If I want to go start looking at documentation, figuring out how to modify this, I've got a good starting point here. So here's my CSS. And so that was cool. Didn't take me too long to figure that out. I spent a lot of yesterday just playing with the cards region, trying to make sure I understand all the different points that are in it and how to embed a video or embed my HTML. One of the things I learned was if you want to do an iframe in Page Designer on your cards region here under attributes, let's say we're using media here. You could probably use some other places. There's just regular the body or something for some of this stuff actually. Once you go to advanced formatting, you're just using HTML, so I think you could put that in the body also. Just go to advanced formatting there, and it's basically HTML. You need to put your iframe code here, and then you would reference a column using the amper column name dot syntax in your little template here, and that would be like the link to the YouTube video. Now, one of the problems with that is that always gets double quotes added to it, and so if you want to disable the controls on the video, that's part of the link, and so then it would mess that up, and you'd have to include that in your expression that's returning, the data that has that. So just learning some of those quirks with working with that. Ideally, there would be some way of disabling essentially those injections. Like, just give me, I'm going to return raw HTML. Don't do anything with it. If I'm using like a variable or a column. So anyway, so what we have is what I think I'm going to go with data sets. So as you add data sources, say you're monitoring your AWS cloud environment, and that all ends up in a data set somehow. That would be you'd have multiple data sets for sort of different things. And so we're going to use the cards region. And it got me thinking, like, when do I want to use a cards region? Anytime I'm basically presenting a screen behind a screen, I think card regions make a lot of sense. And also, because you can use it with the faceted search, this seems to be, for me, to be the quickest path to get something up and running. Now, I've used cards just for navigation because they work really good if I'm not doing a progressive web app. If I'm just doing a web app that I want to look good on the web and on my phone, the cards work really well for navigating with your thumb up top. I really like those. And so I've used that with my Super Loser app. So, but I probably don't want to mix cards navigation and cards for data sets on the same page here. So today the objective will be I need to set up because I have one test user. So when you use K2 in your app config, I'm going to show the default app config, not my actual app config under my chart directory, which is the actual app config. This is what you would see if you download. We have a app test user and app test pass. And if those are set, and you go to, when you go to your app and you go to app users and you've uncommented this, it will, and the environment is dev, you can change what, you can set up whatever you want. This kind of creates a initial user that's already active. It's already been validated so that you have a user you can log in with right from the get-go. The problem is I'm using this user for all my tests, and as part of that, it drops it, which then drops all the data. So in order to do UI development, I don't want to be dropping the data when I'm doing tests, so I'm going to add another user, and this is the file that I would use it to. So this is where I will be adding that user, and if I want to make actually it just occurred to me, it would be helpful to have a config file that I reference in my app that I don't have to worry about merging all the time. Like everything in it would be unique. So I might just add that to K2. Now that way I can add things like this and I don't have to worry about like, going through the merge. If I add it in app config, there's always these differences and it becomes one I always have to check off. Oh, do I want that back into the original template? So that would be pretty cool. In fact, the location for that might be best right in here, right in the default. So that's just like going to be your own config file. Never going to have to worry about merging that with anything. It's very app specific. I don't know what we're going to call that, but that's what I think I'll also add today. So I need to create another user. So app users is where that's going to go, and then we'll generate some actual data, so that when I'm doing my development here, I always have these data sets to start with. You should always have a default data set. And then we're going to add some way to add data set. We won't worry about delete data set because that would actually be from the data set page. We'll add the data set page that this links to. That's another issue with cards that I'm going to have to work around or work with, is that cards support actions, which is cool. So I'll have to create an action, and then I'll have to, have that action will have to have a variable in it, which is driven off a column, like where to go and stuff like that. I haven't figured that out, but we'll figure that out. The nice thing about it, it's a good starting point, and it can be modified in the future. Now, a really cool project to me, if I had the time, that I would love to see out there, more on the UI. I'd like to see a lot more UI work done that I can learn from. One would be like, ideally you'd be able to generate from code every type, all kinds of variations of the card region, because there's a lot of things you could do, including custom CSS and stuff like that. So it'd be really cool if there was like some kind of piece of code that just generated random cards with all kinds of different types of things, like even different fonts and stuff would be cool, because it would really help in the design process and the aesthetic aspect. To say, oh, I really like that look, that works well, things like that. Even to the point of including various types of content in the card. So the more that could be generated automatically from code, the cooler it would be to be able to show, like, to flip down through a couple thousand variations of cards and be able to set attributes maybe in your code that generates it, like the length of the body or things like this. Kind of give it some parameters, but I don't think all of that stuff can be set from code easily. So just something to think about, something I'd like to see. So anyway, that's what I'm doing today, and I'll hopefully get an update out later and show you what progress I've made. I could be making much faster progress if I was better at UI, and also not getting distracted with a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, All right, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you can see I am in the beautiful mountains of Tennessee. Not really. I think that's Switzerland or Italy somewhere. All right, thanks.